That's my brother's sheet.
We're ready.
His is a boxy.
Yes.
Mine's a Wrangler.
Okay.
Ignore me. I don't mind being uncomfortable.
Ready to go?
We're ready.
Okay. All right, folks, let's come back together for our next docketed item here in our afternoon docket. It's about 3:30, so we've got two more dockets here this afternoon. I'd like to call on Ms. Nunn to read our next docketed item, please.
Okay, docket PZ-19-002. Application has been filed by JS Real Estate LLC for the approval of a revised preliminary subdivision plan for 87 lots on approximately 154.6 acres to be known as Ballard Woods, Section 5. The property is located East Highway 22 at Ballard Woods Drive and Ballard Glen Parkway, Smithfield. The zoning is R1 Residential District and AG1 Agricultural Residential District and CO1 Conservation Residential District.
All right, Ms. Alvey, if you would introduce the docket, please.
Absolutely. As Ms. Nunn just stated, this is a revised preliminary subdivision plan for Ballard Woods, Section 5. The property is approximately 154.6 acres and is zoned AG1 Agricultural, R1 Residential, and CO1 Conservation. This is an aerial view of the property in question.
Just time out for just a second. The judge is here.
Judge just got here. He has a presentation he'd like
Sure.
to do real quick.
Unrelated to the case.
That's right. Judge, welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting.
Thank you. I apologize for stopping. What's going on here? I think I'm 1 minute late, but
That's all right.
I'm just here today to express my appreciation and the appreciation of the community to Jan Horton. Today is Jan's last meeting, I believe. He has notified me that he has to leave the commission. But Jan, we want to thank you for everything you have done. I'm not honestly sure exactly how many years you've been here, but you've been here the entire time I've been county judge. I've watched you carefully from a distance. I think you're a very fair and thoughtful commissioner. You've done your best to provide fair and reasonable service to everyone who's come in here to protect our community, but also allow for the advancement of the community. Thank you, and wish you the best of everything in the days to come. Thank you. And on behalf of the community, I'd like to give you a small token to take with you, one of our Colonel William Oldham coins. You can't take this to a pawn shop and get anything for it, but when you look at it in the future, remember that we appreciated you and thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, sir. Jan, thank you very much for your service. He served on the SRC, the Study Review Committee, for a whole number of years and has provided good counsel to us for a long time. So as chairman, I'd like to thank you personally also. So.
I can look that up for you, but I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look that up.
All right, we'll go back to the docket.
Okay,
here.
so back on to Ballard, the revised preliminary subdivision plan for Ballard Woods, Section 5. This is the aerial view of the subdivision. This shows the overlying zoning, which shows that it is zoned R1 residential, and then you'll see the areas here in green is CO1, and then the area, it's kind of hard to tell on the overhead over here, is AG1 agricultural. This is the location of the 100-year floodplain that is located on part of the property. Site history, we'll go through the site history of Ballard Woods subdivision and then the site history for Ballard Glen. In October of 2002, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a request by Christian Development for a preliminary subdivision plan for 105 lots on 203.4 acres to be known as Ballard Woods. This was the preliminary subdivision plan that was approved in 2002. This is the entrance at Highway 22 for the subdivision. On May 22nd of 2018, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a request by Ballard Hills LLC for the approval of a revised preliminary subdivision plan for Ballard Woods Section 4, Lot 98. This is, was recently, came to the Planning Commission. This is where Lot 98 was now the roadway for the connection into the future section for Ballard Woods Section 5. So then, 2 months later, July of 2018, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a request by JS Real Estate for a preliminary subdivision plan for 33 lots on approximately 54.3 acres. This was to be known as Ballard Woods Section 5. So this was the Lot 98 from Ballard Woods Section 4 that I just spoke of, and then highlighted in red was Ballard Woods Section 5. History on Ballard Glen. In March of 2005, the Planning Commission approved a zoning map amendment on approximately 258 acres from AG1 and CO1 to R1, AG1 and CO1. And they also approved that same day a preliminary subdivision plan for 184 single-family residents and 4 large tracts on 314 acres overall. So this was the preliminary plan that was approved in 2005 for Ballard Glen. It was into 4 different sections. You'll see those highlighted: blue, green, purple, and we'll call that dark blue. And on September 27th, 2016, the Planning Commission approved a revised preliminary plan for Ballard Glen Section 3, consisting of 44 single-family lots on approximately 40 acres. And they also approved a minor revision to Section 2 on that same day. The main change was from the 2005 to the 2016 plan was the connection to the adjoining property went away. The previous developer basically went under, and then the current developer purchased this property, but did not purchase the future section where Section 4 that we'll be talking about today is located. So that stub road went away because they did not own the adjoining property. Whoops. So then in May of 2018, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a revised preliminary road, which was a road layout for Section 3 consisting of 44 single-family lots on 40 acres. So this is the difference between the 2016 and the 2018 plan, and the main reason for that connection there is because the land had recently been acquired by the current developer, which is before you today. So now the stub is being re-provided. What's before you today is the applicant is proposing preliminary revised subdivision plan for 87 lots on 154 acres to be known as Ballard Woods Section 5. So, whoops. This was what you originally saw as Section 5. This is the undeveloped portion of Section 4 for Ballard Glen. So they're proposing to make this all one new section in its entirety for Ballard Woods Section 5. The tract of land is located to the northwest portion of the Miller property, which also is the location of Ballard Glen Sections 1, 2, and 3. So this is just kind of a zoomed out version that shows this is Ballard Glen, this is Ballard Woods here. So the section that we are talking about today is this area and this area here. The applicant's revising the existing Ballard Woods 5, which was 33 lots, and the undeveloped land of the Miller Farm, which would have been Ballard Glen Section 4, which was 69 lots, and totaled 102 lots between the two developments. So previously there was 102 lots that had already previously been approved for Section 4, Ballard Glen, and the 33 from Section 5 was, 33 from Section 5. But the applicant's only proposing the 87 today. This would be the road layout here. They would have access to this future section here from Lot 98 through Ballard Woods subdivision, and then the connection through Ballard Glen Section 3. And then the applicant is also proposing a stub road to the north to the adjoining property owner. The plan outlines 33.2 acres of open space and has a note on the plan. Trees in the open space will remain with the exception of trees located within the limits of the proposed detention basin. So you'll see highlighted here in blue are the proposed detention basins, and then highlighted here in green are the open space areas. Traffic assessment was completed for the proposed development and determined based upon the volume of traffic generated by Ballard Woods Section 5 for the year 2025. There will be a minor impact to the existing highway network. All approaches of the intersections evaluated will operate at a level of service C or better in 2025. Therefore, no mitigation is necessary for the roadway capacity as a result of this development. This came straight from your traffic study that I provided to you in your staff reports, but I'll defer further comment to Paula and to Jim Silliman regarding the traffic study. This is looking at traveling east on Highway 22. This is the entrance right here to Ballard Woods subdivision. So this is the east view. This is the west view going back towards LaGrange. Again, that's another, excuse me, east view going towards Smithfield. This is the entrance to the subdivision, which is Ballard Vista Drive. This is Lot 98, which previously was approved as a connection to Ballard Woods Section 5. This is the entrance to Ballard Glen. This is the west view, again, going towards LaGrange. This is the east view, again, Smithfield. This is the entrance into Ballard Glen Parkway. This is the construction of the new roadway that will connect Section 2 to Section 3, which involves a creek crossing. Proposed binding elements, they are the standard ones that the plan only applies, the approval only applies to the plan presented at the January 22nd, 2019 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2, there should be no subdivision of any lot into greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Number 3, the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. And number 4, the cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of building permits issued to 17 per year, beginning with the first record plat. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval of a revised preliminary subdivision plan for Ballard Woods Section 5, comprised of 87 lots on approximately 154.6 acres. So I guess at this time, we'll have Paula and Jim come up to go over the traffic.
Paul, if you'll want to come first. I guess just for the record, name and address again.
Paula Wall, Neil Schaefer, 200 Winnington Parkway, Suite 205, 40222. Per our regulations, we conducted a review of a traffic impact study that was originally submitted on December 24th, 2018, and then based on some comments, revised, based on some comments both from myself and the Highway Department, a revision dated January 17th, 2019. Per the requirements for the previous Ballard Woods Section 5 and the TRC review for this case, a full impact study was submitted to both KTC and Oldham County for our review. Overall, the review of the study did not indicate any substantive errors or discrepancies in the study methodology, data, or capacity analysis. Summarizing the results, based on the volume of traffic generated by Ballard Woods, Section 5 for the year 2025, there will be a minor impact to the existing highway network. All approaches of the intersections evaluated will operate at level of service C or better in 2025, and therefore no mitigation was necessary. If you recall back when we reviewed the previous plan on this case, there were some questions about left turn requirements on 22, and we had recommended that there be further analysis, which is what this consists of. The left turn warrant analysis from the study did indicate that left turn were warranted from a traffic volume standpoint on 22 at Ballard Vista Drive for both the 2021 no build and the build PM peak traffic volume, and at Ballard Glen Parkway for 2021 PM build. However, the state had some conversations with the applicant by email regarding the need for those left turn lanes. They stated that they had looked at the left turn warrants and noted that the left turn is warranted in the existing condition at Ballard Vista, and the left turn is warranted after the traffic from Section 5 is added to Ballard Glen. They did not intend to pursue or require the turn lanes at either location, since the increased traffic from Section 5 had minimal impact on the existing condition and the volumes of this portion of Kentucky 22. Looking at our subdivision regulations, there is a section in our code that talks about turning lanes. This is a little bit different requirement than from what the state's procedures are for determining requirements. This basically states the developer shall obtain and dedicate sufficient right-of-way and construct turning lanes as necessary to maintain the capacity of the existing streets. Turning lanes are required whenever a proposed subdivision or an additional section of a subdivision generates an ADT of 1,000 vehicles or greater and are approved by KTC and/or the county engineer. When the KTC and/or county engineer determine that turn lane is desirable, the state design and construction standards shall be utilized. And I had some discussions with Jim and looking at the Jim Urban about the interpretation of the regs, and the way it's interpreted is that it would be an overall, if you add up the sections of the subdivision, generate over 1,000 vehicles. Not just each section, because if you did that, you'd have each section that would be less than 1,000, and a left turn would never be triggered, when in reality, the left turn would be required because of the traffic volume.
And at some point, the volumes are there to support the decision to put in turn lanes.
So just to look at the traffic projections by the engineer, and again, these are based on projections, they're not based on actual counts. So 2025 build ADT for Ballard Vista is 1,434, and Ballard Glen is 1,625. So I'm going to defer, because it says and/or the county engineer, I'm deferring to the county engineer to address the determination regarding 22 and left turn lanes, when and if they may be required. That's all.
All righty, thank you. Mr. Silliman.
Pick up where Paul left off.
Oh, just for the record, name and address.
Oh, yes, Jim Silliman, County Engineer, 4734 Grandell Drive. Looking through the traffic impact study that was provided by the developer, as Ms. Wall indicated, the volumes indicate, the projected volumes indicate the need for a left turn at Ballard Vista Drive, at the build and the no build condition, and for Ballard Glen Parkway at the build condition. So because both the data, when analyzed using the transportation cabinet's figures and when using this section of the regulations that states the 1,000 vehicles greater or greater, we feel that there should be a left turn now at Ballard Vista Drive, and then Ballard Glen Parkway should have a left turn lane when volumes dictate that, when they reach that 1,000 mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Williams, Humboldt County School Board.
So this would be a amended letter from us. When you add in the additional residences, it really doesn't change the impact of where we were before. And so based on the calculations that I have, it would put us to a final available capacity percentage of 115.87% of capacity at the schools, which would be 15 building permits per year based on the multiplier.
And just for the record, your name and address too.
Michael Williams, Oldham County Board of Education, 6165 West Highway 146 in Crestwood.
Thank you, sir. All right. All right, I think we're, let's see here. Any questions from the commission for staff? Any questions for the staff? Yes, sir. Mr. Douglas?
I just have a housekeeping request for Ms. Alvey. Let me find my notes. In 2005, you said that this was a zoning map amendment.
Ballard Glen was a zoning map amendment, not Ballard Woods.
I don't know, I'm just reading Ballard Glen, yes.
Yes, Ballard Glen was a zoning map amendment,
And
correct.
that was recommended approval from the Planning Commission to the legislative body
Correct.
for the total 258 acres.
That's the only portion that they rezoned. The entire site for Ballard Glen was 314 acres.
Okay. And then the Ballard Woods was already zoned at R1 and CO1? Is that-
No, it's zoned AG1 and CO1.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's all I needed.
Is that all? Fabulous.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Oh, sorry.
On the front page of the staff report, this is where it says R1, AG1, and CO1 for Ballard Woods, which is what this proposal is, total.
Then that is incorrect. That's actually what Ballard Glen was done. Let me go back to, there's too many Ballards.
Amy, is this not combining both of those, so it, in
It
fact?
is, it's what the current zoning is AG1, CO1, and R1.
On the total tract for this proposal, there are 3 zoning classifications.
Correct.
Correct, and that was all approved by physical court for the total original.
Just for the R1.
Right.
Correct.
Thank
Yes,
you.
because-
That's all. I needed a clarification because it didn't show it on our
yes.
staff report there. Thank,
Okay, any additional questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on into presentation by the applicant or representative and others in support of the application. Mr. Baxter, you have 50 minutes, sir, as always.
You want me to take off 15, Mr. Chairman?
Please no.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Been a long day.
If I could, I was going to get Mr. Shum, Mr. Vincent, and my traffic engineer all sworn in
Okay.
at this point, if I.
It's none?
All right, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barry Baxter, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. I represent the applicant, JS Real Estate LLC, along with Bob Vincent and Diane Zimmerman. We are here to testify about our proposal as it relates to Ballard Woods Section 5. This just restates what Amy had already told you, what we're asking for. And she had put this in there, you all have already seen this. I pulled out the relevant history, though, just because there might be a little bit of confusion about Lot 98. You all will remember we were here about Lot 98, and the day that we came about that, that got taken care of to provide access to the remaining property. Once that got approved, we came back a couple months later and got the original Section 5 approved. It was for 33 lots on 54.5 acres. And you all approved that with this access point on Lot 98 being how we were going to access that piece of property. This is, I'm going the wrong direction here. There we go. So this would be just that drawing that Amy talked about with the Lot 98 access approval. This is our prior plan that was approved by this commission back in July. So we were talking 54 acres, 33 lots, with a stub that was going to go out to remaining properties of JS Real Estate at the time. So there was an existing stub on the prior approved plat. Our current proposal, we're not asking for any rezoning. We've got R1, AG1, and CO1 that property that we're using. Within that confine, it's 154 acres, 87 proposed lots. The access will be on Ballard Woods Drive and Ballard Glen Parkway, and there's 33 acres of open space. This would be the drawing of the prior proposal, and I put the new proposal, which, as Amy indicated, about here, well, I apologize, probably a little closer to over here, would split that piece of property from this being what was prior approved and what we had asked for previously, and then this obviously adds this area to it as part of our new proposal.
This is a drawing of the layout, and I'm going to ask Mr. Vincent to come up at this point and explain what he's done, how he's laid this out, and what the primary features are, if I could.
Good afternoon. Bob Vincent, Vincent Engineering and Land Surveying. My address is 306 West Jefferson Street, LaGrange, 40031. I'm going to do my own little quick review here. Ballard Woods Section 5 is located on the north and the east side of the existing Ballard Woods subdivision off of Kentucky Highway 22 in Ballardsville. Approval of this development would include a connection with the existing Ballard Glen subdivision to the east, which is right here. It would also have a stub road with the property to the north, which is here. Ballard Woods Section 5 was originally approved by the Planning Commission in July of 2018, this past year. Early in 2018, my clients acquired the balance of the Miller Farm that was approved as Ballard Glen subdivision back in 2006. Our first version of this layout consisted of the 33 lots that were originally approved for Ballard Woods Section 5 in July of 2018 by the Commission, and 102 Ballard Glen smaller lots, which, again, that was our in-house first version. You did not see that 102 version of the proposal. If you would like to see that, again, this is the original 33 lots that were approved in Ballard Woods Section 5. And then this area here is the 102 proposed lots that I came up with. Again, it was not presented before the Planning Commission at any time. You may recall that many residents of Ballard Woods said they had no problem with an extension of the Ballard Woods lots at the TRC hearing and the Planning Commission hearing for Ballard Woods Section 5. My clients listened to these comments, and we have revised the balance of the Ballard Glen property and Section 5 to create 87 at least 1 acre lots, more in keeping with the existing Ballard Woods subdivision. This would eliminate 48 of the smaller Ballard Glen lots from my proposal on the screen and converts the balance of the Ballard Glen lots to at least 1 acre in size. Now I'm going to go back to the Ballard Glen Section 5 that was approved back in July. And by reconfiguring the original Ballard Wood, I said Ballard Glen, I meant Ballard Woods, Section 5 in the Miller property, we've eliminated 5 creek crossings that were approved with this original Ballard Woods Section 5 application. So those 5 creek crossings are all highlighted here in red. And the way that we've eliminated them is with the current configuration, we'll be running cul-de-sacs on the ridges. And again, we won't have to cross the creeks in those five spots. Again, we are proposing 87 lots on 154.6 acres. There's 12 acres in the road right-of-way. There's 33.2 acres in open space. This leaves us a net density of 1.3 acres per lot. Minimum lot size is 1 acre, so again, we're well over the minimum. The gross density is 1.82 lots per acre compared to 1.88 lots per acre. And that's not correct, I'm sorry. The gross density is 1.82 acres per lot in our proposal, and the gross density is 1.88 acres per lot in the original Ballard Woods development. As Amy said, this property is zoned R1, AG1, and CO1. There are no proposed houses in the CO1 district, so the setbacks for AG1 are 50 feet in the front, 15 on the side, 40 in the rear. In the R1 portion, the setbacks are 35 in the front, 15 on the sides, and 30 in the rear. On-site storm drainage will be accommodated by streets with curb and gutters and 4 proposed detention basins. All Oldham County stormwater quality requirements will be addressed in the construction plan phase of this development. I wanted to go back and just reiterate that back in July, We did have the redevelopment plan for Lot 98 Ballard Woods, and that was approved by the commission as our access point for what was known as Ballard Woods Section 5. All utilities, including water, will connect from Ballard Woods Section 4 to the new Section 3 of Ballard Glen. This will improve the water flows and provide a second feed to assure fire protection to the proposed and existing sections of both Ballard Woods and Ballard Glen. A second feed will also help all other utilities such as electric and gas in case of an outage. That concludes my presentation.
Bob? Amy, could I get? Thank you. Just out of your all staff report, I copied and pasted these. These are the items that were noted in the staff report about our conformance with the comprehensive plan, comprehensive with the zoning ordinance, and conformance with the Oldham County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. We submit that we fully conform with the zoning ordinance. There are no waivers or variances being requested with this. There's a stub road connection which is mandated in Section 5 of the subdivision regulations. We also tender deed restrictions that talk about that in conformance with your all's regulations. They require some language to be in there that no one shall oppose that, so we included that in the proposed deed restrictions. This talks about our traffic assessment, and I know there may be a little bit of a dispute back and forth, but that's why we have Ms. Zimmerman here to talk about her conclusions as it relates to that. Ms. Zimmerman, if I could get you to come up and talk about this conclusion and your findings as it relates to the left turn lanes and things like that.
Good afternoon, Diane Zimmerman, 12803 High Meadows Pike, Prospect, Kentucky 40059. I did prepare the full traffic impact study as requested by Mrs. Wall, and I think that there's very important language that needs to be addressed with this as we talk about the need for, or the requirement for, left turn lanes on Kentucky 22. And so if I refer to Table 2 in the traffic impact study on the peak hour levels of service. Kentucky 22 at Ballard Vista Drive is currently operating at level service A. It will continue to operate at level service A with and without the development in the AM and the PM peak hour. And at Ballard Glen Parkway, it will operate at level service A in the currently, it will in the build condition and in the AM and the PM. So the first sentence of this section says that in order to maintain capacity. And so my conclusion is based on the fact that that the code in Oldham County says that mitigation must be required when we are at level service to maintain level service C. This development maintains level service A, which is significantly better than maintaining level service C. So there is no demonstrated capacity need for these turn lanes based on the requirement of mitigating to maintain level service C, and that the fact that the section that was cited in Ms. Wall's letter, the very first sentence says, in order to maintain the capacity of the existing roadways. I think that 1,000 ADT is the appropriate place that we should look and make that examination. There are many locations that 1,000 ADT would definitely require left turn lanes, and that should be looked at in the view of capacity. It also goes on to say that it should be with the consideration of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, who has stated they are not going to pursue this, and it does not meet their guidelines for installing a left turn lane to an existing intersection. So
just to restate, your conclusion is as well that turn lanes are not warranted either at either of these locations.
They do not meet the level service requirement at either intersection to provide turn lanes. The warrant diagrams are provided as one tool that the cabinet uses to evaluate when there is a capacity deficiency. And at this point, no capacity deficiency has been demonstrated by myself or the county.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm just reiterating what she concluded. I copied that directly out of her report about what her conclusion was, that mitigation is not necessary for the roadway capacity as a result of this development. The typical homes are going to start at $430,000 and be priced there and up. These would be some just building elevations to give you some kind of idea about the types of construction we're talking about. Same, and one more. Mr. Shum is here to talk about the construction if you all have any questions of him. I have, and I will hand out at the appropriate point, this slide. I printed it for all of you all. We are asking you all to approve our application based upon the fact that it conforms with the Oldham County future land use map that predicted that this tract would be single-family residential. It's in conformance with all zoning and subdivision regulations. There are no requested variances or waivers. There's compliance with goal LU2 and objective LU-21. We've agreed to incorporate all the binding elements that were proposed in Amy's staff report, and obviously it would be contingent upon our adherence to those binding elements. That would conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone here to speak in support of it? Okay, seeing no one. What about testimony and questions by those opposing the application? Okay, if I could get you all to stand, and we'll get you sworn in at once, and then you can come forward.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Whoever would like to come first, and all right.
Amy, can we get the layout, that original site plan that you, very first?
My presentation.
Yeah.
Get your name and address for the record, if you would.
Steve Porter, 2406 Tucker Station Road, Louisville, Kentucky. The very first.
The original Ballard Woods.
Yes, up back, I'll go back. Yeah, go to that. This, I think, will be a whole lot less problematic than the one you had just had. At least we hope so. Because my clients is the Ballard Woods Homeowners Association, which is a homeowners association that is owned and controlled by the residents of Ballard Woods subdivision. And I might just add that the other subdivision nearby, Ballard Glen subdivision, is still owned and controlled by the developer, the same developer who is proposing this new plan. So, and that is an important distinction here, as you'll see when we get into it. We have really just two problems. We're not totally opposing all of this. You have done things in the past. You opened up that lot 98 for an access point, which my clients do not object to. You did approve a 33-lot change to Ballard Woods Section 5. They're proposing that that would be different. And then they're basically what they're doing is combining Ballard Glen Section 4 and Ballard Woods Section 5. These are the two names that were part of this in the past. Our first problem is the name. We do not want this to be called Ballard Woods. And there are a number of reasons for that, and really mostly legalistic reasons. We think that the public will misinterpret what the control is for the subdivision if it's called Ballard Woods, and in fact, it will not be part of the Ballard Woods Homeowners Association, because this Ballard Woods Homeowners Association does not intend to accept this new property as part of its control. And they do not need or want to be involved with that. as far as any homeowners' dues or more importantly, any responsibilities with the development of the project and the maintenance of the project in the future. So we would request that the name not be allowed, and the developer can call it whatever he wants to, but we request that you would put a condition of approval that the name not include Ballard Woods, that those words would not be included. It could be Ballard something else. Maybe it's Ballard Glen, Section 38, I don't care. Or Ballard Estates or something, but not Ballard Woods, to avoid the confusion. And that confusion would be, for many people, possible purchasers think that they're joining in with the Ballard Woods HOA, and they would not be. Contractors who are building houses, suppliers, potential lien holders, government officials, closing attorneys. When closing attorneys close a deal, you always ask, are there any homeowners association dues? And if it's called Ballard Woods, who are they going to call? They're probably going to call my client Aaron, the treasurer of Ballard Woods, who is not part of this. So just to avoid all of that confusion and to avoid any potential problems between the two, between Ballard Woods and this new subdivision, we would request that you put a condition of approval that says they can name it anything they want to, just cannot call it Ballard Woods Section 5 or Ballard Woods anything. So that's the first thing. And let me say that really this is a combination of two subdivisions, or two sections, let's say. Ballard Glen Section 4, which had 69 lots, and Ballard Woods Section 5, which had 33. So really the larger part of this is Ballard Glen, is what has always been called Ballard Glen, which was proposed to be the final section, I guess, of Ballard Glen. So we think it would be much more appropriate for it to be Ballard Glen or something else that the developer, we're not going to try and name it for the developer, just as long as it's not Ballard Woods, to avoid that confusion that we talked about. The other question that we have, or the other problem that we have, is access for construction vehicles. We're asking that you do a condition of approval that restricts construction traffic, construction vehicles and traffic, to Ballard Glen Parkway. Now, in past history, last year, you all very properly, at the advice of, I think, your engineer or someone, that the road that was going to lead through this would be called Ballard Glen Parkway. It'd just be an extension of Ballard Glen Parkway and not an extension of Ballard Woods Drive. And we think that that is proper. That parkway, just to compare it to Ballard Woods, Ballard Glen Parkway is about from Highway 22 to where it's going to cross the creek. And you saw in the original, in some of the photographs that Amy had, there's construction vehicles and construction equipment right now ready to build a bridge across the creek at the end of Ballard Glen Parkway. And that gives the developer access from the original Ballard Glen subdivision into Ballard Glen Section 3 and eventually into Section 4. So that is underway. Mr. Baxter informs me that they have not gotten final approval of that, but obviously with all the equipment that is there that was shown on the photograph, that is something that they're planning to do in order to get into the land. From approximately around where the creek is, where the bridge is going to be, to Highway 22 is 1/2 mile. 1/2 mile. On that 1/2 mile of this parkway, Ballard Glen Parkway, there are no houses fronting or with driveways on that 1/2 mile of street. Zero. Zero houses fronting, zero houses with driveways on that 1/2 mile. Now, if we look at Ballard Woods Drive, Ballard Woods Drive from 22 until it reaches Lot 98 is 1 mile, twice as long. And there are 46 front yards on Ballard Woods Drive. 41 are currently constructed and inhabited. There are 5 lots that I think are still owned by the developer, Mr. Shum. So on that 1 mile, 46 front yards and driveways would receive construction traffic on Ballard Woods Drive if you allowed that to happen. Ballard Glen Parkway, and just a half a mile, half as long, has no front yards and no driveways that would be directly and immediately affected by the construction traffic. So we think it is a logical and reasonable request for you to add another condition of approval, and that is that all construction traffic into this new subdivision be limited to access through Ballard Glen Parkway and not be allowed to come in through Ballard Woods Drive. Eventually, when the development is completed, it will have access to Ballard Woods Drive over that Lot 98, and that's fine. You've already approved that in the past, and my clients don't disagree with that. But we do want these 2 conditions of approval. That's all we're asking for. We're not getting into the problem of density, and John doesn't have to worry about making any opinions on what it is. Just very simple, very simple. Don't call it Ballard Woods, because that confuses the public and confuses contractors, et cetera, lien holders, potential lien holders, taxing people, closing attorneys, et cetera. That this is not part of Ballard Woods Homeowners Association, and we want the construction traffic to be limited to a street that has no front yards that will be bothered by that construction traffic. My clients will have a little additional testimony. They've got a petition through good old SurveyMonkey as to the people in Ballard Woods subdivision that they support this. So I will sit down now and come back later possibly.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you, sir. Who would like to come next?
Hello, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Erin Guilfoyle, 4048 Ballard Woods Drive.
You spell your last name, please.
Sure. Guilfoyle is Guilfoil. Appreciate your time today. I know you've had a long day, and the good news is we've also had a long road. We've been here before. We've been here since May. I've learned to speak up and make sure I talk slowly, so I'm working on it. I'm here to express the community's concerns. I am a board member of the HOA. I serve as the treasurer today, and I have for the past 2.5 years. The position, as you know, is voluntary. I am a full-time wife, a full-time mother of 2 elementary school children, full-time engineer as well as a profession of 15 years, okay? So I'm here, I've taken the day off because this is important. This is very, very important for us. We have several items, but I want to make sure I lead for the greater good and so that you have factual information. A couple things that's not even on my notes. I just want to point out the traffic study. It's disheartening to hear that we don't have agreements on a left turn lane off of Highway 22. That's a huge concern. The vantage point of the pictures that you have in your staff notes, I feel are incorrect. They've mentioned the Service A capacity level is not exceeded, therefore doesn't require a turn lane. What we're missing is the blind spot, okay? There's a huge blind spot when you turn left there. The picture was shown as if you were in the left-hand lane off in the grass. Well, obviously, we drive on the right-hand side of the road, you know, and you turn in from that vantage point. So that picture is not accurate, so please be aware of that. It's a very compelling story if noted otherwise. I will mention, so the name, the subdivision name, as an HOA board member, there is a lot of work that goes on to being the member. Revenue, increased revenue, that's wonderful, but there's a host of issues that come with it, okay? Financial responsibility, so we want to talk in detail about that. So let me first start with Oldham County regs. You're well aware of the requirement for subdivision names, but for those in the audience, just so that we're all on the same page, the subdivision shall, it's section 5.1C, the subdivision name shall not duplicate or phonetically approximate the name of any other subdivision or development in Oldham County without it being an extension of an existing subdivision. So here is the clarification that we need. We don't feel this is an extension of Ballard Woods. If there is a definition that is documented, please let me know, because I searched and I was unable to find it. So we've come up with items that are what we would feel an extension of the neighborhood, and so I put it in a letter. The good news is we've done these proceedings long enough that I tried to do my due diligence. So on January 15th, you should have been presented a letter in which I authorized, okay? This states on there the desire with any, thank you. Okay, so I've done a letter both for the Technical Review Committee on December the 19th and then also for here today. The desire with any subdivision expansion is really to maintain the continuity of the existing neighborhood. And we're going to talk about lot area, lot width, front setback, respective architecture, price range, home size, streets, names. These are all the things in which we thought would be considered a continuation of expansions, and they don't meet any one of those criteria. Okay? The lot area, for example, sorry.
A little bit helps.
No problem, no problem. The lot area, for example, has a net density that is about 30% smaller, okay? It does meet your guidelines for the R1 CO1 regs, but note it is a difference. It will be a visual difference upon impact when you drive into that neighborhood. 1.2 or 1.3 acres versus the existing of 1.6, okay? So just note the visual discrepancy will be noted. Because the lot sizes are smaller, please make sure we maintain what's already existing. That would be the front setback off the road of 50 feet. That would also be the width of 150 feet, and potentially with CO1, the depth of 200 feet. Okay, so just some notes here to make sure we are all on the same page. Architecture. You saw some pictures of beautiful homes that are intended to be built in that area. It is a different architecture than what we have today. We have record based on a meeting December the 12th at the Ballard Woods Fire Department. During that discussion, Mr. Shum commented, the developer, on the future home construction of that development. He said it would consist of brick, stone, and cement board. But it's a craftsman style, and that change was because there's a perspective change in what the buyers are looking to purchase. Okay, and I know we don't rule on anything along those lines, but just want to give you a little bit of background of why we think this will be different. It will be quite different from what we have. And so the street name, this was interesting. This came up in the Technical Review Committee. They wanted to extend the Ballard Glen Parkway, was in Section 2 and Section 3 of Ballard Glen. Well, now that will extend through the proposed Ballard Wood 5. And that was for continuity, so for firefighters and responders, so that they could follow the road and get where they needed to go. I completely understand that. What's strange is you have front lots now on Ballard Glen Parkway that live in Ballard Woods. Okay, a host of confusion here, guys. So we've got to make sure the names match the subdivision as it's proposed, and I just do not see that in its current state. It's a very large development. We came here last year, I stood here last year, and it was 33 lots. We were very hesitant and upset at that time, but we've come to go, okay, we have a lot behind us that will be, or land behind us that will be developed. But 87 lots is huge. That's, again, Ballard Glen 4 proposed and Ballard Wood 5 combined. That's almost double what we have today. We're 104 lots today, and going forward, that's expansive. So again, our position is we are opposed to the name. The increased revenue is of no desire. I personally do the bills, okay? We don't want that additional responsibility. The mention of 4 retention basins, just in the last hearing we had, I bet those will be the requirement of the HOA to maintain once that development is finished, okay? Those are huge concerns. When you have that many lots of that size, it's doubling. I mean, I'm not sure why it wasn't presented as 5, 6, and 7, actually. But with that many lots, you have dues that have to be sent out. You have late fee reminders that have to be sent out. You have liens that have to be filed. You have pools that go in, fences that go in, problems with dirt bikes on the road, and 2 private roads that we currently maintain through our HOA to date. So those are some strong concerns, and I hope you agree that Ballard Woods is not an appropriate name for this subdivision, so we'd like it to be excluded. I've talked with a few Ballard Glen homeowners, and Ballard Glen Estates actually might be a bit more appropriate, but again, it's not my land to develop, so therefore I can't give a recommendation. There you go. On our second point is around the construction entrance. This, as you have seen in the diagram, it is a roadway all the way back through the very, very far back portion of our land. So that's 41 homes in which you pass, 41 driveways. We do not have sidewalks, unfortunately, in our neighborhood, so our kids do play in the streets. And I'd prefer that the construction to be maintained through Ballard Glen Parkway. Okay? There's a picture, as shown before, but I have the same very picture of that construction is underway. All the heavy equipment is there. No homes are on that parkway today. Okay? Just for the record and for submitting, I've also learned that it's great to have good attendance and everybody stand here and show their opposition, but I've also learned that a petition goes a long way, okay? It speaks volumes. So in a petition we have put together in just 3 short days, we had 74 respondents. Again, we only have 93 in which are developed, so that's an 84% response rate. We feel very strongly on this viewpoint. So, for example, we had 67% majority agree that we oppose the subdivision name, okay? So that's how we usually do a lot of our votes and a lot of our deed restrictions and credence or amendments. We make sure we have majority vote, and we have that today. So I'll let you have that. Also, 70 are opposed to the using Lot 98 as a construction entrance. That's even higher. It's 75%. Okay? These are homes. These are our children, and we do not need that construction traffic there today. Okay, this is a packet, so it's large, just so you're aware, 74 pages of each and every person in that neighborhood sharing our voice with you today.
We'll need a copy, or we'll need that for
Yep,
the record.
absolutely. All right. Let's see, anything else? If you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to come up and continue to speak on that. Okay? Would you like a copy now? I did send it just briefly, late yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, who would like to come next? Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, everybody. Brett Schlater. I'm at 4046 Ballard Woods Drive. I'm an adjoining property owner. So Aaron and our council did a really nice job of laying out the legal points. I'm actually here to talk more about the selfish quality of life points. So I know that may not be considered in your decision, but this is our shot. So you're going to hear it. I'll be brief. I submitted a letter last week, so hopefully it's in your packet. I won't go through that letter, but I did want to at least share with you. I'm at 4046. The road that would be potentially the construction entrance is 2 doors down from my house. I have a 2-year-old. I have a 4-year-old. I recently moved to this subdivision, and it took a long time to find a place to live. The reason I picked this subdivision was because of the size and because of the lot. I back the HOA and I back everything that our council has said, but to be honest, I'm not even okay with that. I don't want this subdivision. I picked that lot and that particular piece of property for what it can provide to myself and my family. And we want to maintain and preserve that. And if we connect this subdivision with that subdivision with that subdivision, we're not a community anymore. Please don't take that away. Okay. The application that was recently approved, their council is exactly right. It's been approved, it's been approved, it's been approved. Yeah, but it wasn't 80-something houses, and it didn't connect 3 neighborhoods. It was 30-something houses. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. This is not the same proposition. Please consider that. Okay? Lastly, from a property value standpoint, I just moved, I purchased this home in July of this year. I can assure you that if I knew all of this was going on, I certainly wouldn't have purchased the house. And if I had to purchase it, it would not have been at the value that I purchased it for. So to think that there's not going to be an impact on the adjoining property owners and their property values, you have to consider that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Jones. I live at 4047 Ballard Woods Drive. I would exactly echo what Brent said with deference to our council. We moved here from Clark Point. It was a neighborhood that Walt also developed previously. Many of the reasons we moved there is because of some of the issues that presented itself. You know, my wife and I are the residual of a neighborhood where promises weren't kept, but they were made. I lived right next door to a house that actually did not have a basement, even though it's in the HOA bylaws. We had maintenance fees that were exorbitant based on just maintenance because we had been promised a park and a walking trail and courts. We're supposed to be an estate section in the back of that neighborhood. So I don't believe him. I honestly don't believe him. And we moved here. I've got a child that's 12 years old. He has Asperger's. I could have counted on 2 fingers how many times he rode his bike. And he goes out every day, if he can, now, just based on the way that the neighborhood's laid out. And Aaron was exactly right. All of our children play in those streets. And if you were to take the path back there and you would pay what, and you consider what we paid for those properties, okay, and think about how just even that access road impacts just our quality of life. It's absurd to even really be up here, even having this discussion. He's trying to make one homogeneous neighborhood out of 2 separate neighborhoods with separate lots, lot sizes, and mix. And I would echo what Brent said. I would not have purchased this property had I even known that Lot 98 was even going to be allowed to be an access point through. So I would just ask that you consider that, obviously to deny it, but also I'll make this point. I challenge every one of you to take a left-hand turn into Ballard Woods Drive off of 22 and add about 200 to 250 homes and think, you know, how you would feel without a left turn lane going into that. There's no way. And I know that I wouldn't be comfortable with some teenager texting behind me trying to turn in with that additional traffic. So please consider that. Thank you for your time.
All right, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Larry Myers, 3902 Ballard Woods Court. I would like to address the left turn lane just for a little bit. I understand their studies, but you're enlarging this by twice-fold of what it currently is the projection. Now, down the line, I'm sure there would be other projections come in. I was in law enforcement for 32 years and dealt with gobs of traffic issues. I have lived in there for 12 years. I cringe every time I turn left in there. Not a problem turning right, not a problem coming out. And if you look at your picture, which isn't totally from the perspective of where you're driving your vehicle from, that left turn lane is blind until you get right on that, or that left turn is blind until you get right on that curve. And one of the reasons is the other side is a big ledge. It's probably 12 foot high in front of that house. Now that's a 55-mile-an-hour zone. So you're coming up there and cars, and you're trying to slow down, and they're coming on you, and it's a total different entrance than what Ballard Glen has. That's on a straightaway. When you look at that and you turn left off of there, it's a total different deal than turning left into Ballard Woods. And I understand what the people were saying about the traffic studies, but go out there and drive for yourself and see what you think about a left turn with that much more traffic coming to the area. And the rest of it, I think, has already been said, and thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Anyone else? Still have quite a bit of time on the clock here, so. Afternoon.
Stephanie Hawkins, 100 West Jefferson Street. I'm neither opposed nor for, I just have a few questions. I didn't quite understand the R2, are all of these homes in the R2? Some are in C01 and some are in the Ag 1, is that correct? Okay. I'm thinking about the case that we just.
R1, AG1, and CO1 zoning.
But there's no homes located in the CO1,
There's no homes in the CO, sorry, yes.
And there's no home, but there are homes in the Ag, no?
Yes.
correct.
Okay, so this is all,
This is ag here. All of this
And
is
that-
ag. This is R1. That's not part of the property. It's outlined in red.
so over here is where,
Is
over there
ag.
is Ag, okay. And over here is
CO1.
CO1, so this is, it's only this.
Yes, is the R1 area.
And those are, and that is where the homes are going right now?
No,
That-
the homes are going in the ag and the R1 area.
So will it have to be determined, thank you, like the case that we just heard about the dwelling units per acre and in Ag, and like we just heard in the last case?
No, because that was an open space proposal. This one is
Okay.
a standard subdivision, and they have minimum lot size, and they meet the requirements because this will not be on sewers, so the minimum lot size in either zoning classification is 1 acre. Yeah, because
The
there's
R1
no
also.
sewers. Any development that does not have sewers, any residential development, is required to have a minimum lot size of 1 acre.
And so this all fits that, okay.
Correct,
I
yes.
couldn't understand from the beginning statements. So thank you for clarifying that. The traffic study, I'm wondering if that comes down West 22 at all. It sounds like it would add at least about 180 more cars if it's, say, close to 90 to adult drivers.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
If the traffic study came down or all the way down 22 going into Louisville, because that's horrific now. And so in just my mind, representing District 6, which is down 22, the impact that traffic.
Right, I see what you're saying. How far, how far does the traffic
Traffic
analysis
study
go? And it does
go?
not go to the, it's just in relation to the access point to Kentucky 22 from this development.
To 53, so it doesn't go west of 53 down 22. So I feel like it probably should.
That's not a requirement in our regulations.
Ms. Wall, or,
Well,
Need to
why
get
don't
her
you,
to come
That would be in their rebuttal back to question.
okay. Pardon?
yeah, okay. Yeah,
Or questions?
No, this is just testimony being on an opposition, right?
well,
Or
or
questioning.
questions, either ones,
And
either
she's
one.
asking questions.
So, do y'all have a response to that as far as,
But what she's saying is, why don't you wait and get a response back? Ask the questions and we'll get a response back rather than
Sure.
trying to answer each question.
Sure,
Yep.
and that should be, I feel like, looked at in the analysis, because I don't know, and you could ask those that live in Ballard Woods or currently, maybe the percentage that do drive into Louisville, because if we add now 87 homes, and then they're driving down 22 west of 53, that is a traffic concern that I think should be looked at. So that's all I have.
okay, anyone else? Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the questioning of the applicant and those opposing the application by the commission. Any questions yes, Mr. Douglas?
I guess Ms. Zimmerman. Good afternoon, almost good evening. I think the commission had received your revised January 17, 2019 traffic impact study,
Yes, sir.
and also heard your testimony today that the left turn lane was not warranted, correct?
Warrant is an interesting word. The Transportation Cabinet has a chart which they use to say a left turn lane is warranted or not warranted. The chart is referred to in language that says when you should use it.
And
But
so-
that is said chart, yes.
So it is correct that in the traffic impact study that you provided to us, it does say the left turn lane is warranted.
Yes.
Okay, no further questions. My next question, if I don't mind,
I'm sorry?
you don't mind,
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
is with Mr. Baxter.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if Ballard Woods subdivision has been platted deed over to the homeowners association?
It has.
And do you know if the developer worked with the homeowner association about the name of the development that he's proposing, since he's already deeded it over?
Well, okay, I apologize. Maybe I misunderstood your question.
Okay.
I understood your original question to be whether or not the homeowners had taken over the homeowners association.
Correct. That's my question.
Okay, so there would be a dispute between the developer and the homeowners association about that process. So there is sort of an impasse between them about how that occurred. The first that we heard about any issue with the name of this section came over the weekend. I was contacted at 5:15 Friday afternoon by Mr. Porter. Mr. Porter asked me to contact him over the weekend. I emailed him, told him I was not in a position to speak with him on Friday. He emailed me on, that was Saturday. On Sunday, I got an email from him at about, I think, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, raising these two concerns that he raised with you all today. So up until that point, we've been to technical review for the previous section. We've been in front of you all for this section. We came back to technical review previously about this, and we get on the docket today. So through all of that, going back probably to April of last year, no one has ever said a single word to us about any of that until Sunday afternoon I received an email.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Douglas? Okay. Mr. Finney?
I have some questions for Ms. Zimmerman.
Yes.
My questions, I guess, concern the methodology at how you arrive at a figure, and then and that, of course, leads you to a conclusion. You state in your report here that you used 2003 data as your base point, because that was the last traffic study.
That is not what that says.
Okay?
It says that the last count made by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet was in 2003. We made new counts in May of 2018.
You made new counts in May. Was that a complete study or just that,
Yes.
just that intersection?
All three intersections. Kentucky 53 at 22, Kentucky 22 at Ballard Vista, and Kentucky 22 at Ballard Glen Parkway. All three of those, and that data is in the appendix of this report.
Okay, and that was just a Tuesday study?
We actually collected data on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday
Okay.
at those locations. But
Okay.
yes, the Tuesday data was used.
Okay, all right. How do you project traffic levels out from the beginning of a project to the finished build date?
Two things happened on this particular case. One is a little bit unique to this location, but because there are undeveloped lots in this development, trip generation was used for the undeveloped lots to make sure that I accounted for all the developed trips there. And then let me make sure I quote this correctly, a 1% annual growth rate was applied to the 2018 to get to 2025. So 2025 no build is 2018 factored up plus the additional lots that are already approved and could be built between now and 2025.
Okay. Why is a 1% growth rate assumed?
It's felt to be the most appropriate growth rate for that time. Looking at the historical data, I also have the traffic impact study from 2006 for the original Ballard Glen, and so I evaluated the growth rate of that, what had happened specifically from 2006 to the counts that we made in 2018 to determine that 1% was the correct, to account for developments that we do not know about yet. We specifically accounted for what we know could happen, but this is for and essentially what we're saying is what development's going to happen in Henry County.
Yeah, what might be?
What might be.
Okay. Is that 1% a number that you come up with, or is this a state standard or something like this?
I come up with it, and it was reviewed by Ms. Wall as well as the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet for appropriateness and application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Davis.
I have a question, probably for Mr. Shum. Will the building restrictions be the same in the new section as in Ballard Woods? Are the building restrictions going to be similar, the same as Ballard Woods to the new development you're doing?
The building restrictions are similar, but they are not the same.
Not the same?
And I filed a draft deed restriction with the commission for their review.
So they're similar, though?
We need your name and address for the record.
Walt Shum, 6100 Breeze Hill Road, Crestwood, Kentucky, 40014. Have I answered your question, ma'am?
Are they pretty similar, like in square feet and design?
Within 10 to 12%. Typically, what happens in a development, we build contract houses and we build spec houses. May I elaborate on your question, ma'am?
No, you've answered my question.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Is that all, Ms. Davis? Okay. Mr. Falvey.
Along the same lines, Mr. Shum, is there this original section of Ballard Woods that had 33 lots that we approved? That's all owned by you, as I understand it? Is that
It's owned by one of my LLCs.
okay? And was that factored into the HOA for Ballard Woods, that land there? Are they responsible for that land, that HOA, even though they haven't taken it in? Wouldn't the HOA take in everything that was considered Ballard Woods?
That's an interesting question. They have said they don't want to take it in. I'm perfectly fine with that. Typically, it takes 3 to 4 years from the date of approval to get to the point where we're turning an HOA section over. So I would submit that they and I would want to talk about that along the way. But if they want a determination up front that they won't take it in, I'm perfectly fine with establishing a separate HOA for this section. I'd like to further point out that the 33 lots that are already approved are approved under the name Ballard Woods 5, and the entryway is approved under Ballard Woods 5. The additional lots are actually a reduction from what would have been Ballard Glen on half-acre or less lots to approximately 57 one-acre lots. So we're upzoning. We're actually giving up our lower zoning in the section that was approved in 2006 by the Planning Commission as part of Ballard Glen.
So administratively, 33 of these lots are already in the Ballard Green, or named in the restrictions, Ballard Woods.
Technically, they are not, because we have not dedicated those restrictions. The county has not taken over the roads. They're not built yet, and the HOA has not been voted into Ballard Woods. They have the perfect right to vote it in or vote it out. I don't know why today they would particularly not want to hold that option open
until the point in time when they see those homes and see the revenue from that section. That's only my suggestion.
Is the HOA fee the same in Ballard Woods it is Ballard Glen?
No.
Different amounts. You mentioned that you may want to do that. You just need to get with them over that. You would consider.
Yeah, I never say never because who knows, there may be $600,000 houses back there and Ballard Woods fees may raise to whatever point and they may want that revenue. To say they don't want it today is a determination this board makes. Future boards may think otherwise. I would think that's outside the purview of binding restrictions for the board and a matter between the developer and the HOA. If the HOA doesn't want to take that section in, they have no obligation to take it. And I think the county attorney would speak to that. So to say one way or the other at this point, I think is moot.
Then again, along the same lines, they had one other issue, and that was the construction coming in through Ballard Woods versus Ballard Glen Parkway.
Right.
Is that a problem?
Actually, I would like to address that. Amy, can we get the map of the entire area up here? May I take a minute, Counselor? Thank you. The original, maybe this one. No, the one that shows the roadways. Back up, keep going back, that. Okay, so do we point and click?
You just hold it, just draw it.
Okay. So currently, I'm sorry, do you have the proposed new section in this overview? Does that include the Ballard Glen section? Okay. Go back for 1 second, I'm sorry.
To the computer?
To what we had on. So to be clear, frame before with the entire development.
It'll take a minute for it to flip back to. How's it not going back?
It's not untypical when I use technology that it fusses.
I'm with you.
No, the one you had, keep going.
That one?
No, you were on it when it first came up. The original development plan. There you go, back. Okay, so in the original plan, this entire section was approved by the Planning Commission as Section 4 of Ballard Glen. We subsequently decided, since this was approved in May as Ballard Woods 5, that it would make more sense to give our zoning, our R1 zoning up in there and upzone to 1 acre lots. Given the size of the tract, the topography, and what the folks said at the hearing of Ballard Woods initially, that they would desire houses more along the lines of what was in Ballard Woods. Ballard Glen Parkway was always scheduled to come across the creek right here, and this section of Ballard Glen had been approved in May as 44 lots. So essentially Ballard Glen Parkway is going to come up to this point and go this way, and this section is where we're giving up the zoning to get larger profile lots. So the HOA in Ballard Glen will most likely take over this area, and this entire 87 lot area can be its own HOA, or it can be part of Ballard Woods HOA. The construction entrance, thank you. They are right that there are no driveways on this section of Ballard Glen Parkway. However, given the size of the 44 lots exiting here for construction and the fact that because the entry to the new Ballard Woods is going to be up in this area, most of the construction traffic coming down here is going to go out Ballard Glen Parkway because they have, this is a supposition, this is not a traffic study. Because they have a clearer shot with no stop signs. This was already approved and would go through Ballard Woods anyhow. So what remains is probably half of the lots in this back section, either going out Ballard Glen Parkway or going around and coming out through Ballard Woods. I submit that it's a situation very similar to what happened in Briar Hill and Orchard Grass. Orchard Grass Boulevard extends up into Briar Hill almost its entire length.
construction traffic travels several ways into Briar Hill, and I would imagine this is going to be somewhat similar. They're going to take the path of least resistance, but this already exists. These 33 lots already exist as construction traffic through here. That being said, the typical absorption rate of Ballard Glen is somewhere between 10 to 15 units a year, construction. The typical absorption rate of Ballard Woods type houses, which are typically 1/3 to half again more expensive, is somewhere between 6 to 8. 8 would be a heck of a year on those $500,000 and $600,000 houses. So I think the issue is, while in your mind you see a parade of construction traffic, the truth of the matter is 6 to 8 units a year ain't much. It isn't like Brentwood, it isn't like Norton Commons, it's relatively innocuous.
Of that, the new section that's in discussion, you're going to do, I don't know how many different sections in there, but, phases. Would the Ballard Glen be the first phase of the first 15 or 17 lots that you're going to do, or is it going to, or is that, maybe you haven't even thought about that much?
Given our current construction aptitude, and now I need the new Ballard Woods plan, I'm sorry, thank you. Tough questions. You're making me really go back here.
And that, well, can I ask? I don't think we got a yes or no answer on, can you limit the construction entrance to Ballard Glen Parkway?
I would say no, because is it fair to the folks in Ballard Glen and the 44 lots that are going to be developed that you throw all the construction traffic on them and alleviate any from Ballard Woods? When we already have 33 lots plus 6 or so I own today that are going to go through Ballard Woods.
Yes or no answer?
No, thank you.
Why not?
Was that a why not?
Not from here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would suggest at this point in time that your supposition about the traffic going through Ballard Glen is correct, because we expect to do something like this in the first phase of Ballard Woods, and most of this traffic is going to exit through Ballard Glen. Maybe all of it, I don't know, but again, all of this is already approved as Ballard Woods 5, and all that construction traffic was unencumbered in any previous decision as to where it had to go or not go.
And just one follow-up question, and Barry, maybe it's to you. On both those points, both construction and the renaming, are both of them you just found out about them yesterday? Sunday?
Yes, sir.
No,
Yep, thanks.
Friday.
No, I got a contact by Mr.
Okay.
Porter saying he had some concerns on Friday, and then he sent me an email on Sunday.
All right. Any additional questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Douglas.
Walt,
Oh, forgot.
back up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas.
That's okay.
Too many years around machinery
I'm getting
for
to,
my wife. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to run for my life, I said.
I just want, again, to have you explain, and I know you were already asked and you said no, about the alternative construction traffic.
Okay.
But I just want to go back.
Specifically,
Well, let me just give you this, because you made this statement. It's only a few more lots. I think, or you used some term, it's just accessible, easier to come across to Lot 98 into that area. Has there been any infrastructure yet placed into the sections off of Ballard Glen?
no, nothing's been built as of yet.
So how much earth-moving equipment are you going to have to bring in to bring those for the roads?
Earth-moving equipment, interestingly, will probably come up through Ballard Glen.
So
That's the shortest, easiest, most accessible route. What I think they were referring to is construction traffic when we're building houses.
Right. But I think also they're concerned about all the other infrastructure that needs to go through there. That large containment, earth-moving equipment, bulldozers, dump trucks. I think that was some of their concerns. I think that they were bringing up.
Right.
That, already, even with Mrs. Zimmerman saying that, although she stated one way and stated another way, but a left turn lane could be an issue there at Ballard Woods Drive. So all the construction coming in on that way could be a safety issue. I'm just trying to get to a point where what would be most feasible for construction traffic to come in
Well, you
for
have a
the
left
development.
turn, you have a left turn into Ballard Glen the same way.
Yep.
And I would submit this to the commission. As far as I can remember, there's one left turn lane on Highway 22, and it's at the 329 new bypass.
Right.
The school district was required when they built the school on Highway 22 out towards Ballardsville to put in a turning lane. Subsequently, the state rescinded that order on the school board to build that turning lane. And I would submit to anyone on this board that if you sat at the school on 22 trying to turn left, that you would say you've never seen such a large mess of traffic. However, the state doesn't deem it necessary to put a turning lane in a place where several hundred cars turn in the short time of an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. And yet at this subdivision where the trips are going to be nominally built over the next 10 years, to require a turning lane as we add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trips would make that decision the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet deemed unnecessary seem to be wrong. So that's my unofficial opinion on turning lanes. We paid for the study, we had it done, it's been analyzed, and it's not a practical point to put a turning lane because it impacts the property across the street.
Appreciate your full explanation on that, and also possibly your consideration of the heavy moving earth equipment or whatever going to a different alternative route. which you
The
mentioned.
issue becomes, Mr. Douglas, how do we differentiate between a bulldozer used to do a house foundation and a bulldozer used to plow a road in? It becomes a what is this thing for type of answer. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? Mr. Klingenfuss.
I guess for Walt again. My question is, you've got 2 subdivisions with entrances out front, identify them. You're going to put a third one in behind. Is that an issue for emergency response? I mean, it won't have a monument sign if you make a name change, is what I'm getting at.
I think, as required by the subdivision regulations, every street corner is clearly marked with the road moniker. Am I not understanding, sir?
Well, if I'm going down 22 and I see Ballard Woods and Ballard Glen, I don't see a third one. It's back in behind the other 2 subdivisions.
Right.
So it's not marked on the road.
Well, it would be Ballard Woods or Ballard Glen. Our proposal is that it's Ballard Woods, and it's currently Ballard Woods in an approved proposal. Why would we change it?
But emergency responders are responding to an address, not a subdivision name. So their GPS and the way they're routed is to an address.
Okay, they're comfortable, I am.
They are.
All right.
As long as the names don't conflict, like a street name doesn't conflict. And Matt, now let me just explain while I'm talking about it. Matt Toller, who's our GIS manager, is the one who does the addressing. And so he does look at subdivision names and street names and street numbers to make sure that it's organized right, first of all, and there's no conflict.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on into rebuttal evidence and cross-examination by the applicant. Mr. Baxter, 10 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would have some rebuttal, except Mr. Shum, I think, answered all the things I was going to rebut for him, so
Okay,
I don't have anything else.
Okay. All right, rebuttal evidence and cross-examination by the opposition. Mr. Porter.
Thank you very much. I would like to make a correction to Mr. Baxter's testimony. There was a December 12th meeting with the neighbors, 5:30 PM at Ballardsville Fire Department. The minutes of that meeting done by Ms. Guilfoyle are in the file. And at that hearing, or at that meeting, questions were raised regarding the transition of new lots to the Ballard Woods HOA. Residents inquired about how does this benefit the current homeowners. Residents inquired about HOA fees, and there was discussion about current roads, et cetera. So that subject was raised with Mr. Shum at that point. He was at that meeting. Then on January 15th, a letter came from Ms. Guilfoyle to the Oldham County Planning Development Services. And in that letter, she raised this whole question of the naming and talking about the name of the, I do agree it makes sense for Street A to be named Ballard Glen Parkway to avoid confusion, but what doesn't make sense is the neighborhood name. A name such as Ballard Glen Estates is much more appropriate for the development as it has been presented. So unlike what Mr. Baxter said, and he may not have checked the file to see those letters, so I don't know, but this whole controversy over the name is not something that has just come up in the last 3 or 4 days. That's the point I wanted to make. But if you look at this new, what they're calling Ballard Woods Section 5, it's really more Ballard Glen Section 4 than it is Ballard Woods Section 5. Physically, geographically, acreage, number of lots, and everything else, it's more the old, if we want to call it that, the old Ballard Glen Section 4 than it is what they have called it as Ballard Woods Section 3. So we think, given the fact that the Ballard Woods, the existing homeowner-owned, homeowner-operated homeowners association in Ballard Woods, at this point does not want to accept any of this new part, either what was originally the 33 lot, Section 5, or the Section 4 of Ballard Glen. They don't want to accept that. Now that could change. That could change 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. I've seen that happen. But right now, they do not want any association with that. And I think they have the right, according to your code, they have the right not to have a new subdivision named the same as their subdivision. And that's what it would be. So we would just ask for a simple condition of approval that they not use the name Ballard Woods in the name of this new subdivision. And then secondly, of course, we're asking for the construction traffic to go through Ballard Glen. Mr. Shum has even admitted that most of the traffic, and especially the original traffic and the land clearing traffic and all of that, would come through Ballard Glen Parkway, come through Ballard Glen. He's admitted that. And so that would pass by nobody's front yard, nobody's driveway, instead of 46 front yards and driveways if it went through Ballard Woods Drive. So we ask for those 2 conditions of approval, and we think that those are justified. We don't think that this is just a last-minute request, but we think it is important to the current owners in Ballard Woods Association. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that spoke in opposition, have any rebuttal? Anyone else? Okay. All right, seeing none, Mr. Porter, I think, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, come on forward.
Erin Guilfoyle, 4048 Ballard Woods Drive. I appreciate all that I've heard today. It's great. But just as we mentioned, the time to prepare, we have worked countless hours to be prepared for these hearings. In my technical review committee meeting notes, we had 3 issues at that time. We had the for sale sign it didn't show that this connecting road was a connection. We had, the lot sizes were smaller, and that we had a breach of contract with the connecting road. We had hoped all of those would have been taken into consideration with this plan that was then proposed. So, and then we also did, as referenced in the December 12th meeting, mention the concern with the name. It's a problem, and so I just want to go on record and be very adamant that we could not have moved any faster. We have not gotten respondents in the petition that we had out that's presented today to show any stronger opposition than what we've done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Anyone else want to have a response on a rebuttal? Okay, before we get into final, Mr. Irving?
Well, there's one question that Magistrate Hawkins asked about the range of the study, and that I don't think was ever answered.
Okay.
So, Barry, can you have your traffic consultant talk about that?
Wasn't sure where that answer came in. The study did include the intersection of Kentucky 53 and Kentucky 22. I think it's important to remember that the purpose of a traffic impact study is to evaluate the impacts of the traffic on the adjacent roadway, and kind of your constitutional requirement of how far can you ask a developer to make an improvement. So there could be issues that, yes, this traffic would go on Kentucky 22, but it's sort of beyond the scope of any traffic impact study to look at that. It's more a concept or an evaluation that could be made at more of a regional level, or your major thoroughfare plan to kind of take into account what development might have occurred since you last had a transportation element updated in your long-range plan.
Okay. All right.
Chairman,
Oh, sorry.
may I ask a question of Mr. Urban?
Well, we're kind of past that, but who do you want to ask the question?
You can in discussion, I suppose.
Okay, I'll take that.
If you can just hold it until
I'll
after.
hold it.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Just do it in discussion.
All right, we're down to the final statement of the opposition. Mr. Porter, you have anything? Final statement?
I think I really made my final statement already. I will say that the homeowners association and probably everybody in all the neighborhoods would appreciate left turn lanes. I don't think that, it's probably not debatable that Ballard Glen and Ballard Woods all would probably love to have that left turn lane, but our major concern here today is the naming of this new subdivision, which is predominantly Ballard Glen land, not Ballard Woods, and the construction traffic. Those are the two things, and all we're asking for is just two simple conditions of approval. Thank you.
Okay. All right, final statement of the applicant. Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be handing out that slide where I had a proposed motion as it relates to this particular revised development plan. I think the history here is important in that this property all around here has been messed with and messed with and messed with since it looks like maybe 2001 or 2002. But all the time, it has been clearly contemplated by the owners of the property and in front of this board that this property was going to be developed as single-family residential property. And what you have here today is a revision of a plan that was approved by this body in July of last year without these complaints that we are now hearing today about construction entrances and about the name of the subdivision, where there has been an addition to our prior plan to move into land that was clearly going to be developed as single-family residential. So all that has taken place here is that we have expanded the scope of a previous project. The plan that came before you today calls for houses that are consistent with the houses that we promised back in July, because the folks from Ballard Woods came in and they were concerned that they didn't want Ballard Glen type houses. So Mr. Shum makes a commitment that he's going to build on acre lots, that he's going to build large houses, $430,000 and up, consistent with the homes in Ballard Woods. That was a complaint that we had at the last hearing, and we addressed that complaint then, and we are addressing that complaint the same way now. These, I understand, you know, nobody wants anything built in their backyard. But the truth of the matter is that when these folks bought these lots, there is no question that these developments were on the books, and it was clear that this land was going to be developed. I understand that somebody who lives in these lots right here would like to have this nice open farm field behind them, but that's just not reality. That's not how this land has ever been envisioned to be. Your all's long-range plan has already marked, and it was in 2014, your future land use map said that this was slated to be single-family residential. So that's what we're proposing. That's what we have here. This plan that has been put together by Mr. Vincent calls for no variances, no waivers. We have the blessing of your staff indicating that we are in conformance with the subdivision regulations. We are in conformance with the other things that I illustrated up there, the flood map and those types of things. We have agreed to the incorporation of the binding elements, and it is clear to me today that we have done what we are required to do under the law to get an approval of this particular development, and we would ask you to adopt the binding elements that Ms. Albee proposed and to approve this development as we have submitted it. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, can I hand these out?
Yes. Before we close the docket for consideration, Mr. McWilliams, you said you had a quick question?
Right, I do. I'm just curious as to the role of the commission in telling a developer how to name their subdivision, or how to direct the construction traffic through their subdivision. Isn't that beyond our purview?
Yes, and then no. You asked two questions. You want me to elaborate on that?
Whatever you want to do.
Well,
I just don't know that we can,
Well,
should be there.
let me, as I explained, our GIS manager is one of his responsibilities is to address every parcel. And in assigning a street number, he has been part of the technical review committee, which has reviewed the subdivision layout for things like potential conflicts of where roads may change names, and trying to make sure that there's a good transition, and also then looking at the specific names of those streets. And if those street names that were proposed, either at a preliminary level or at record plat level, and it can be done either place, don't have conflicts, then it's not up to us to name those streets. He just looks at it, are we using too many cherry somethings or other, or is it too close to one that's already named that? So in terms of streets, we do have jurisdiction. In terms of subdivision names, we again just simply look at, is there another subdivision in Oldham County that might confuse a person who's calling for emergency response? We don't, in that case, tell a person or a developer how to name their subdivision unless there's a conflict.
Yeah.
So that's first question.
And to my
Second-
knowledge, there is not a conflict here that we're aware of.
That's correct. Now, whether it conflicts with the desires of an HOA or not, that's a separate issue. I'll call it civil versus a planning issue. And this does connect via a street from Ballard Woods to another development of some sort that could lend itself to being called the same thing. Got that? That's the first question. The second question was determining construction entrances, and the developer is supposed to show us in the construction plans where their intended construction entrance is. In this particular case, given that you've heard testimony about type of roadway and number of driveways entering and exiting on these two streets, there are ways of saying, well, you can only use the construction entrance here or there, but I don't know legally necessarily whether there's a mandate that says you can limit it. Now, there are techniques. We can say that there's a stub a connecting street may or may not be used for a construction entrance until such time, because eventually there's only going to be a little bit of construction left. But that really is your all's decision whether it's an important consideration or not, in my opinion.
That answer your question, sir?
I wanted your opinion.
All right, let's move on into, the docket PC 19002 is closed. And at this point, I'll ask Mr. Urban and Mr. Carter to outline what's being requested on this particular docket.
Oh, boy. This was supposed to be the easy one. Let me go back to my, sorry, I had everything lined out here and then I moved it. In your staff report, as always, there's a proposed motion for either approval or denial, and in the case that you might consider approving this development, which is not asking for any waivers or variances, there are proposed binding elements in the staff report on page 4, and I have a couple other items that you can consider. The ones that are in the staff report are, number 1, the approval applies only to the plan presented at the January 22nd, 2019 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2 is there shall be no subdivision of any lot into greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Number 3, the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of the approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. That's the all-encompassing one that we use. Number 4 is that the cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of building permits issued to 17 per year, beginning with the first record plat. And that's according to our Oldham County Board of Education. You're shaking your head, but I don't know. You just wait until I'm done. And then, you know, you have heard testimony from your staff that says that turn lanes on Kentucky 22 are warranted. And so you could put a binding element that a left turn lane is warranted under current conditions and shall be constructed. And then you can set a time at when that might be, which, considering that it's warranted today, I would say before the first record plat. And then those other 2 items, the name of the subdivision and construction access, I really, again, think that as far as the name goes, you've heard testimony from the applicant that it's not a requirement of any HOA to take over a future section. I know where I used to live, we had 3 sections. 2 of them had one homeowners association, and the 3rd section had another separate one. And so I don't know whether a name really matters in that case or not. And then the construction access we just talked about.
All right, Mr. Carter, anything you need to add?
No.
All right, at this
I'm not
point,
sure
the chair would entertain a motion on docket PC 19002, which is the application for approval of a revised preliminary subdivision plan for 87 lots on approximately 154.6 acres to be known as Ballard Woods Section 5. So the chair would now entertain a motion, either to approve or deny. Mr. Falvey?
Hang on,
Let me try it.
clarify
Oh.
something here. You're raising a question about the number of building permits. Let me just wait for Amy to get the. Well, it's whatever is on the form. The staff report says 17, and Mr. Douglas is questioning whether it's 17 or 15 on the Board of Education's. It might be, but it's a good clarification before we move on.
See if I can quickly find the form. Any other time it would jump right out at me.
I thought it was 17, but, okay. All right, Mr. Falvey.
Mr. Williams said 15, but
I'm sorry?
I believe his testimony said 15, Mr. Williams did, but this says 17, it's
So
limited to
it's
17.
it's important to pause for a second to make sure that we get the right number. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, finding
You
one.
have his number?
One sheet.
Phone number?
I don't. It's not a huge difference, and for some, do you have it?
Well, the testimony at the, I don't have the, like, I can't find the actual form, but his testimony at the TRC meeting was the development nets 41 students. The campus capacity is currently 116.5% capacity. After the recent redistricting alignment based on capacity multiplier, there will be 17 building permits per year permitted.
17. All right, Mr. Falvey.
Again, I'll make the motion to approve docket PZ 19-002, the revised preliminary plan for Ballard Woods, Section 5. It seems to be in conformance with all zoning and subdivision regulations. There are no requested variances or waivers. The applicant has agreed to the proposed 5 binding elements. I would like to incorporate the other 2 that Mr. Urban mentioned. One, the proposed left lane, the 2 left lane intersections. And I forgot you had one other in there,
The access?
the access.
Well, I didn't make an actual statement, so construct a sentence, if you will. So the turn lane one is, the left turn lane is warranted under current conditions and shall be constructed before the first record plat.
Aren't you making that recommendation?
That's what I would recommend that you say for a binding element. You can alter it if you think that's necessary. And then the other one would be that related to construction access, I think.
No, then it's just the one. It would be the 2 left-hand turn signals. I would like to incorporate that in the
Lanes,
binding
not
elements.
signals.
Turn lanes, I'm sorry.
There's only one turn lane.
Clarification. I mean, my understanding was there was one turn lane. that
One
was
turn
warranted
lane,
at
not
this
2
point.
turn lanes, right. It's only a left turn lane going
At
east.
53, yeah, 1 turn lane, exactly.
The turn lane on Kentucky 22 at the entrance to Ballard Woods.
Right, yes.
Okay, did everybody understand? Mr. Carter, is that adequate?
Yes.
Okay.
No
Do we-
Ballard Glen, just Ballard Woods.
That's
There's a
right.
motion on the floor. Before you get into discussion, there should be a second.
Let me get there. You're trying to confuse me. You said, so that completes your motion?
Yes, it does.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Ms. Davis seconds. Any further, or any discussion on the motion to approve the docket PZ 19002? Okay, Ms. Nunn, we'll take a vote, and this is a motion to approve.
Okay. Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas? Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
I should abstain because I did not hear all the testimony.
Okay. Ms. Bonet?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Benny?
Yes.
Mr. Halfling?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
All right, the motion to approve docket PZ 19002 has been approved on a vote of 11 with one abstention. So that one is completed. We're going to take a 10-minute recess and reset for our last docketed item of the day. Wear me out.
I know. It's a good day to take up out